Dennis related that he was walking fast when he observed what he thought was wreckage in the rear of an ambulance. This quick glance apparently resulted in descriptions of two pieces of wreckage leaning against the interior of the rear compartment of the ambulance that was kind of like the bottom of a canoe, like stainless steel with kind of a bluish-purplish tinge to it. UFO theorists have suggested that these objects were alien spaceship escape pods recovered by the Army Air Forces. However, this appears to be a remarkably accurate description of two steel panels painted Air Force blue on a converted ambulance used by the balloon branch for this mission. The inscription or something, the so-called hieroglyphics, were a probable reference to the lettering painted on the equipment support rack above the panels. The lettering on the rack would be visible, but probably not readable to an observer that quickly walked past the ambulance. Other wreckage all over the floor that was like broken glass was a probable reference to the clear plastic 30-foot polyethylene balloon that was recovered following the balloon training mission and placed in the back of the converted ambulance or the weapons carrier for later disposal. Dennis also recalled that he parked the vehicle he was driving near 3 field ambulances and then walked up the ramp into the hospital. The description of ambulances near a ramp is consistent with the recollections of the balloon branch communication technician who drove the converted ambulance to the Walker Air Force Base Hospital following the balloon accident. While waiting for the injured pilots, A2C Ole Jorgensen, now a retired master sergeant, recalled in a recent interview that he parked the converted ambulance near a ramp at the hospital. A review of Walker Air Force Base Hospital. The ramp was attached to the hospital dispensary, Walker Air Force Base Building 317. The other ambulances described by the witness were either the other ambulance from Holloman Air Force Base that provided medical support of the balloon flight, or the 2 standby ambulances that in May 1959 were routinely positioned adjacent to the ramp behind the dispensary at Walker Air Force Base. Additional security at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital. The witness described what appeared to be a heightened state of security at the hospital when he allegedly took the injured airman there for treatment. UFO theorists contend the heightened security at the hospital was because alien remains were being autopsied. However, it appears that the witness described the security measures taken by Walker Air Force Base personnel due to the unusual circumstances of the arrival of the balloon crew. In 1959, Walker Air Force Base was a part of the 47th Air Division of Strategic Air Command, SAC. It was home of the 6th Bombardment Wing, 6th BW, equipped with the nuclear-capable B-52 Stratofortress bomber. The 509th BW was reassigned to Pease Air Force Base, New Hampshire, on July 1, 1958. The mission of the 6th BW, to strike the enemy with nuclear weapons anywhere in the world at a moment's notice, demanded a heightened state of security at all times. One of the methods instituted during this period to maintain the high standards of security and effectiveness of SAC units was unannounced, surprise visits of headquarters SAC inspection teams. A favored method of transportation for these surprise visits was a helicopter. When a SAC inspection team landed at a base, often the first evaluation they made was of the security response to their unannounced arrival. Failure of security personnel to properly challenge unidentified visitors, regardless of their method of arrival, was considered a serious breach of security. When transported to Walker Air Force Base for medical treatment, unexpected and at an early hour, the balloon crew, not surprisingly, was met by armed security personnel. The security personnel escorted them to the hospital and remained with them until their identities and purpose of their visit were verified. Kaufman, one of the balloon pilots, recalled that their presence at Walker Air Force Base was initially met with skepticism. The helicopter pilot called the tower and said, having come from an experimental base, it was nothing unusual for him to have a balloon accident. We've got an injured pilot on board. There's been a balloon accident and we would like the flight surgeon and an ambulance to meet us at the tower. The tower established the fact that yes, we were an Air Force chopper and that we seemed to have somebody injured, and what had we been doing? We had been shooting touch-and-go landings in a balloon? We got clearance to land right in front of the tower, and we were met by an ambulance and several MPs with machine guns. According to the medical technician who arrived on the helicopter with the pilots, we had difficulty persuading a flight surgeon to attend to the injured pilots. Staff Sergeant Roland H. Hap Lutz, now a retired Chief Master Sergeant, recalled when he first contacted the Walker Air Force Base Hospital explaining that he had 3 persons injured in a gondola accident. The flight surgeon told him to go home and sleep it off. Fulgham, the injured pilot, recalled that when they got to the hospital, there was this controversy going on in the hospital about who in the hell we were. We weren't supposed to be there, and nobody knew anything about Air Force officers flying balloons. We could have been trying to penetrate the security. Walker Air Force Base security officials were satisfied of the pilots' identities when they spoke to Colonel Stapp, commander of the Aeromedical Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. The alien at the hospital. In at least one account of the Roswell incident, a witness claimed he observed a creature walk under its own power into the hospital. While the specifics of this particular sighting cannot be verified, the injury that caused Fulgham's head to swell, resembling the classic science fiction alien head, makes this account, and some others, that at first appeared to be the work of overactive imagination, seem possible. When the balloon gondola struck Fulgham's head, he received, according to his clinical record from May 21, 1959, an extensive hematoma forehead and anterior scalp. A hematoma is a localized blood-filled swelling that in this instance was on the forehead. The hematoma resulted in immediate facial swelling, 2 black eyes, and later caused his skin to turn yellow. The rapid onset of the swelling caused both of Fulgham's eyes to close. As it progressed, according to Kittinger, who accompanied Fulgham at the hospital, his whole face had swollen up and his nose barely protruded. This appearance led Kittinger to characterize Fulgham's appearance at the time as just a big blob and grotesque. When interviewed, Fulgham remembered that even though he didn't feel bad, I didn't know how bad I looked. There was no attempt to hide or limit Fulgham's exposure to persons in the hospital that day. In fact, when he arrived at the hospital, Fulgham recalled that he stopped outside the building to smoke a cigarette. Kaufman also recalled that the injured pilots, Fulgham and Kittinger, waited for treatment on a bench in the hallway of the hospital. Kaufman added that a number of military wives were present in the hospital that day for prenatal care, and there was no effort to keep Fulgham from their view. Bodies with large heads and Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. UFO theorists contend that the U.S. Army Air Forces secretly shipped the alien bodies with large heads to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for further processing and deep-freeze storage. However, it is likely that, in this account, this is a reference to Fulgham's return to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base following the balloon mishap. Although Fulgham did not require hospitalization at Walker Air Force Base, upon his return to Holloman Air Force Base, he was admitted to the base hospital for observation. 3 days later, on May 24, 1959, the balloon pilots were flown from Holloman to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on a specially arranged flight aboard a C-131 hospital aircraft. The return to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base was directed by Stapp and coordinated by Kittinger. The preliminary arrangements for this flight were made by Kittinger while at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital. Kittinger recalled that Patterson Air Force Base were made by phone in busy areas of the hospital, and these conversations could have been overheard by nearly anyone present. Upon their arrival at Wright-Patterson, Fulgham, who Kittinger did not want to transport on a commercial flight due to his odd appearance, still could not open his eyes and had to be led down the steps of the aircraft. Kittinger recalled that Fulgham's wife was waiting at the bottom of the aircraft steps when they arrived. They dropped the ramp, and I looked down at the bottom, and there was Dan Fulgham's wife, Kittinger said. Dan couldn't see, so I grabbed him by the arm. Dan's wife sees me leading this blob down the staircase, and she looks right at me and says, "Where's my husband?" I said, "Ma'am, this is your husband." I presented her with this blob that I was leading down the ramp, and she let out this scream you could hear a mile away. He was such a horrendous-looking thing that she had no idea that the thing I was leading down the ramp was her husband. Fulgham recalled that upon his return to work at the Aeromedical Laboratory, he received reactions of immediate compassionate sympathy from persons he encountered, including his secretary, who cried when she saw him. Within several weeks, Fulgham returned to flying status with no permanent effects. Fulgham went on to complete a distinguished career in the Air Force and retired as a colonel in 1978. Fulgham's assignments included combat tours in fighter aircraft in both Korea and Vietnam, as well as an assignment as an experimental parachutist and physiologist for the space program. Summary. In this section, documented research revealed that the reports of bodies at the Roswell Army Airfield Hospital were grossly inaccurate and most probably had origins in actual Air Force mishaps. Examinations of official records of the alleged primary witnesses revealed that the missing nurse was never missing and the pediatrician did not arrive at the Walker Air Force Base Hospital until 1951, 4 years after the alleged incident. The many fundamental errors in the story, combined with the substantial similarities to the actual mishaps, show that the most credible account associated with the Roswell incident is certainly not extraterrestrial and is unrelated to any events that occurred in July 1947. End of Section 8. Recording by Aaron Bennett. Section 9 of The Roswell Report, Case Closed, by James McAndrew. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Aaron Bennett. The Roswell Report, Case Closed, by James McAndrew. Conclusion. When critically examined, the claims that the U.S. Army Air Forces recovered a flying saucer and alien crew in 1947 were found to be a compilation of many verifiable events. For the most part, the descriptions collected by UFO theorists were of actual operations and tests carried out by the U.S. Air Force in the 1950s. Despite the usual unsavory accusations by UFO proponents of cover-up, conspiracy, intimidation, etc., documented research revealed that many of the activities were actually historic scientific achievements of which the Air Force is very proud. However, other descriptions are believed to be distorted references to Air Force members who were killed or injured in the line of duty. The incomplete and inaccurate intermingling of these actual events were grounded in just enough fact to weave a sensational story, but cannot withstand close scrutiny when compared to official records. To analyze reports of alien bodies that at first appeared to be so offbeat as to not be remotely based in fact, it was necessary to evaluate a wide range of books, interviews, videos, etc. that a less objective review might have rejected out of hand. Only through an inclusive evaluation of these sources were Air Force researchers able to understand the interconnectivity of the widely separated events believed responsible for this incident. And, in opposition to critics who believe Air Force research involving this subject is anything but objective, this research relied almost exclusively on the descriptions provided by the UFO proponents themselves. When collected and examined, the actual statements of the witnesses, not the extraterrestrial interpretations of UFO proponents, indicated that something was very wrong. When these descriptions were compared to documented Air Force activities, they were much too similar to be a coincidence. Soon, it became apparent that the witnesses or the UFO proponents who liberally interpreted their statements were either 1. Confused, or 2. Attempting to